Welcome. So today we're going to learn Parshas Tetzaveh. So Parshas Tetzaveh starts with the Neiros. V'ata Tetzaveh as Bnei Yisrael. Hashem tells Moshe, he should instruct the Bnei Yisrael. V'yikcho elecha shemen zayizach. They take pure olive oil. Kosas lamar. Lahalos ner talmid. To have a ner talmid. And then after this, the parsha goes on to the big day kahuna. So it starts with the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, of lighting the neiros, and then it goes on to the big day kahuna. The previous parsha, Truma, goes through the construction of the Mishkan and all the kalim. You have the Oren and the Shulchan and the Menorah and the Mizbeach, all these different things that you do. And at the end, that's Parshas Truma, and between the Parsha of Truma, Parshas Truma, which talks about the construction of the Mishkan, and the Parsha of Tetzaveh, which basically speaks about Big Day Kahuna, making the begodim that the Kehanim will wear to the Avodah. In between, we have a couple of psukim which tell us the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. And this, so the Mefarshim ask, the Hamikdavar asks other Mefarshim, why is this here? It should be before with the menorah. By the menorah it says, here, right before the menorah, you have the shulchan, and then it says, "V'nosata al shulchan lechem panim lefanai talmid." You make the shulchan, and what do you do with the shulchan? You put lechem on it, and then it tells you the menorah, and should have said that the menorah you should have a ner on it always, just like by lechem of the shulchan. Why is this here at the end of everything, right in the middle? This is one question, and then all the mefarshim are busy with the lashon of v'ata tetzaveh. What is v'ata tetzaveh? Always it says v'yidaber Hashem el Moshe. Hashem talked to Moshe and he said, "Tzaveh b'nei Yisrael." He's speaking to Moshe, instruct Klal Yisrael to do this. Here it says v'ata tetzaveh. You should instruct. What does this mean? All the mefarshim are busy with this. And then it says v'yikchu elecha shemen. Why is v'yikchu elecha? Why are you taking? Why does it say Vikho Elecha? What does that do? Vikho Elecha. So the Ramban wants to say that Vikho Elecha means that Moshe had the job of inspecting the oil and to make sure that it was pure, that it was Shemen Zayizach. That's how the Ramban wants to resolve the problem of Vikho Elecha. There's another question, that why there was a special collection for the Shemen Zayis, that Klal Yisrael brought Shemen Zayizach to the Mishkan for the Neiros. Why was this necessary? There was the Trumas Alishcha, came from the Machzas HaShekel. There was a fund, and every year people gave Machzas HaShekel, and it went into this fund. And this fund was used for Ketores, Korbanos Tzibur. Why didn't they bring the Shemen from this fund? Why does the Shemen need a special fund? A number of questions. Now, this pasuk is repeated in Parshas Emor. Towards the end of Parshas Emor, it says, "Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe leimor." Here it says, doesn't say V'ata Tetzaveh. It says Tzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha shemen zayizach kosas lamor lahalos ner talmid. The same mitzvah is repeated here. So Rashi says, Zu Parshas mitzvahs haneres. This is the mitzvah. Uparshas v'ata tetzaveh nemra loy nemra el al seid melachas hamishkan lefarish tzarech hamenorah. The reason why we have v'ata tetzaveh, this is where the mitzvah of the neiros. But the reason why it says over there is to tell you what the menorah needed. So the question is, so when you make the mizbeach, why doesn't the Torah tell you about karbanos? Okay. So the beginning of Parshas Ba'aloischa is a famous Rashi. It says, "Daber el Aaron v'marta elov ba'aloischa saneres." So this parsha follows right after Nosoi, where you had the matanas of the Nesiim. All the Nesiim brought matanas to the Mishkan, and after that it says the parsha that Aaron has a mitzvah to light the neiros. So Rashi says like this: Lama nismacha parsha menorah leparshas hanesiim. Why is this after that? It says Lefi shekeshira Aaron chanukas hanesiim chol shos daitoi. He felt bad. They all brought matanas and he didn't. Shleihoy imoyim b'chanukah loyhu v'loy shiftoi. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem told him, Chayecha shelacha gedoyla mishalahem. What you have is greater than what they have. They brought matanas to the Mishkan, but what you have is greater. She'ata madlik emeitav haneres, because you light the menorah. So the Ramban asks right away, why is he saying, why is this the great thing that Aaron has, that he's madlik the menorah? Why doesn't he say that he does ketores? Why doesn't he say he does all the karbanas? Why doesn't he say that he does avodas Yom Kippurim, where he's allowed to walk in lefnai and lefnim to the kodesh hakadoshim? What a tremendous chus that is to be able to go into the holy of holies. I mean, why doesn't the Rebbeinu Shalom tell him that's what you have? Why is he telling him about the neiros? And furthermore, there's machlokes the Rambam derived about hadlokas haneros. Everybody agrees that if a Yisrael lights the neiros, it's kosher. The Rambam says kosher. The Rambam says, in the end of Hilchas Bias HaMikdash, the Rambam says, V'chein hadlokas haneros ksheru b'zorim, it's kosher by a zor. Because hadloka lav avoda, just like we find shchita lav avoda, you shech the carbon, it's kosher with a zor. Shchita is not considered. And avoda is kosher b'zor. So hadloka is also lav avoda. Lefichach, therefore, im heitiv hakoyins haneros v'aytziim l'chutz, if the kohen took the neiros and he took them out of the heichal into the azara, where a zar is allowed to be, and the zar muter l'zar la'adlikai. L'chatchila, the zar is allowed to do hadloka. It's not just that if he did it, it's kosher, but l'chatchila, he's allowed to light the neiros of the menorah. So it would seem that so what is the big matana to Aaron? What did he have? He did something which is not even an avodah, and which can be done by Yisrael. And the reason he has it is because he's the only one that's allowed to walk into the heichal. So if he walk into the heichal, so therefore it devolves on him that he does lighting of the menorah. Yisrael could also do it. So why is this, what the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, Shalacha Gedolim Shalahem, this would seem to be the lowest of the avodas, that it's not, that even the Zor is allowed to do it. L'chatchila. So why is this? Okay. So I would like to suggest that Shchita lav avoda means, the Shchita is not an avoda. But it really is an avodah. It's a kind of an avodah, but it's like a lower form of avodah. Zar can do it. For instance, shchita is part of the avodah sadam. Shchita is machshir the carbon. Shchita is therefore avodah sadam. Shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. The avodah sadam is mechaper. If a kohen has a machshavas pigol, or a Yisrael has, whoever's doing the shchita, if he has machshavas pigol, that you're going to eat the carbon chutz l'zmanoi, then it becomes pigol. It's chiyuv kares, becomes puzzle. If you have a machshava shloi l'shma, it becomes puzzle. So obviously, at a certain level, it is an avodah, but it doesn't rise to the level of the other avodas to the point where it requires kahuna. It's also could be done by a zar, but mitzad the carbon, there is an avodah over here. I want to suggest that adlakas neiros is not part of the avodas hamikdash, the avodas hamishkan. It's part of the binyan hamishkan. When you build the base, the mishkan, so you have to build the walls, the covers. You have to build all the kalim inside, and you also, the final thing that you have to do is you need illumination. In order to be a house, in order to be a bayis, to be a Beis Hashem, it needs illumination. So the illumination is part of the construction of the Mishkan. It's not just an avodah like Ketores. Ketores is just an avodah. But it's not, the Mishkan is a Mishkan with or without the Ketores. Doesn't make a difference. But without the light, the Mishkan is not a Mishkan. It's not finished. It's all built and everything, but there's no light. So you need a lighting system. So the Neiros were the lighting system. That it's kind of an automatic lighting system on a timer that goes on every night. So this system, once it's installed, it goes on every night, not with a computer tell it to go on, but a kohen coming in and doing it. But this is a lighting system which was installed in the Mishkan, that every night there should go on a light, and that's what Adlakas Neiros was. So it doesn't belong before with the menorah. It has nothing to do with the menorah. The menorah, it's the place where you light it is on the menorah, but it has nothing to do with the menorah itself. The shulchan needed lechem. There was always lechem on the shulchan. When you took off the lechem one week and you put on the lechem the next week, you slid over the lechem from this week, and while you're sliding this, you're sliding the other lechem onto it. So there was never a point where the shulchan is without lechem. So the tzura of a shulchan, it's wood and it's gold and it's lechem. It's part of the shulchan. The shulchan requires lechem. So therefore, when telling you the construction of the shulchan, it says that there should be lechem on the shulchan tamid, because that's what the shulchan is. When you're telling us about the menorah without candles is still a menorah. It's not a menorah. During the day there are no candles. So, but the lighting of the candles, that is something else. That is the addition of illumination to the infrastructure, to the construction of the Mishkan. So that's why that's what the Rebbeinu Shalom told Aaron. Aaron knew that he's going to have all these karbanas and the ketores, lefnai lefnim. He's going to go in Yom Kippur. He knew that, but he wanted to have part of the construction of the Mishkan. He had no part of it. The Nesiim are bringing pots and pans and whatever they do, mizrak and whatever. You look at Nasi, I remember offhand exactly what Karas Kesef Achas. So they're all bringing kalim and things where they're furnishing the Mishkan. They're creating the Mishkan. Aaron had no part in it. That's what upset him. He knew that he had the avodah. He wanted to have part of making the Mishkan. So Rebbeinu Shalom told him, Shalacha Gedol Shalahem. When you light the menorah, you are also contributing to the construction of the Mishkan. You're adding illumination. And what you're doing is greater than what you're doing, because what you're doing illuminates the entire place and goes into every last corner and every last crevice, and it fills the Mishkan with light, and that is much greater than the things that they are bringing. That is a much greater Shalacha G'dola Mishalahem. So therefore, the reason why it says here, this is not the mitzvah of lighting the candles. This is the last part of the construction of the Mishkan. So after it finished with the Aron and the Shulchan and the Menorah and the Krushim and the Yeriyos and the Mizbeach, then the finishing touch, after all this was done, that comes over here. This is why it says over here. So that's why it says V'ata Tetzaveh, because Always when it says Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe, he says Tzaveh b'nei Yisrael. Moshe is a shliach to convey the reason why Hadlakas Kosher Bizarre is because the entire Mishkan was done by Zarim. You have B'Tzalel, Aliyah, Chacham, they were all Zarim. There were no Kohanim in the construction of the Mishkan. They were all done by Zarim. So since the Hadlaka is the end of the construction of the Mishkan, it's Kosher Bizarre. And of course, it's Mutter Bizarre, L'chatchila. But Aaron wanted this part. So this is, even though this does not rise to the level of the other avodas, but it's a different thing. The avodas are the avodas, and this is being part of the construction of the Mishkan. He wanted a part of it. He did. He had the light. Now the reason why he had it was by default, because nobody else is allowed to walk into the Heichal. Fine. So nobody's allowed to walk into the Heichal. L'maisa, it was his. In normal circumstances, nobody else could do it. He did it. So basically, when he's lighting the menorah, he is finishing the construction of the Mishkan. So always when it says Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe, as it says in Emor, Tzaveh b'nei Yisrael, Moshe's job is to convey a tzivoy, to convey a command. So it's nothing to do with him. Hashem tells it, Stav. It's not directed at him, it's directed at them, and him included among them, but it's directed at Klal Yisrael. Over here, really, who was in charge, who was the general contractor of the Mishkan, was Moshe. I mean, Moshe was the one who built the Mishkan. How did he build it? He had B'Tzalel, he had Eliyav, he had other people. This one was doing this, one was doing that. But overall, Moshe was the one that's building it. So when it comes to this part, of making the neiros, va'atot tetzaveh, this is for you to do, because it's your responsibility. So they should bring it to you, and that's why they don't bring it from the Trumas Halishcha. Trumas Halishcha was for kabbanas, for the service, for the avodah in the Mishkan. This was not for that. This was for the construction. For the construction, you have to have a special collection. So that's why it comes here, and that's why it's here. Okay. I'll say two short things. And the tzitz. Yeah, they had to make a tzitz, a gold plate that he carried, that he had on his forehead, and then there were psil tchelas. There were these blue wool straps. I mean, what kept it in place? So they were the psilim. They kept it in place. They tied it around his head, this over the mitznefes, over the hat. So those were the psilim. So the tzitz had straps to keep it in place. The Gemara says in Zvachim, the Gemara is speaking about if tefillin are chaytzitz, if tefillin are a chatzitza and big kahuna, that you have to put on big kahuna and you're not allowed to have a chatzitza. How about tefillin? Not tefillin a chatzitza. So the Gemara says that tefillin are a chatzitza. So the Gemara says akasha. I'm not gonna go and open it. I'm just telling. So Gemara is akasha. We have a brisa that tefillin are not chaytzitz. So the Gemara says tefillin shel yad is chaytzitz, tefillin shel rosh is not chaytzitz. Gemara says, what's the difference? Tefillin shel yad is chaytzitz because it says yilbash al b'sarai, so it means al b'sarai and nothing in between. Tefillin shel rosh, it says al roshai, so it should be chaytzitz too. So the Gemara says Mokum yesh b'rosh bein mitznefes. No, there was a space between the mitznefes and the tzitz. You had hair, and the tefillin went over there, so it wasn't a chatzitza. So Tosfos asks, so what's the chiddush that it's not a chatzitza? It's not separating the mitznefes from the. There's no chatzitza there. What's the point of tefillin and the chatzitzas? It's on his head. The tzitz is below, the mitzvah is above. Where's the chatzitza? So Tosfos says, Tuterutzim, and the second Teres Tosfos says that could be the Chiddush is that the Ritzuas of the tefillin Sharayish are not a chatzitza under the psilim of the tzitz. The straps, you carry them around. When you put on the tefillin, so the Ritzuas are under those straps. So I would think maybe that's a chatzitza, because the straps have a chatzitza. So Teretz says, no, it's not a chatzitza. So why isn't it a chatzitza? So you could say that the straps were not a beged. They were just a way of tying it on, but that's like kind of difficult to say. That the straps were not kodesh, they weren't part of the big kahuna. They were, I mean, why is it yitur if you have like a band-aid that's called yitur begadim? So you could say, because these are needed. So you could say that. You could say that the straps are really not mekudesh, they're not part of the tzitz. But I want to suggest a different answer. The Gemara says, why is the chatzitza by the shal yad? Because it says al besorei. Why b'shal roish? Because it says al roishai. So you see that from al besorei would not extend to the head. Only if it says on his body, so it doesn't mean if you can't have a chatzitza on the body, maybe you could have on the head. You need another pasuk. Al shal yad al besorei. And mitznefes that there's a chatzitza is al roishai, so you need another pasuk. So you see that one doesn't extend to the other. Now, where does it say? What's by tzitz? Where's the chatzitza by tzitz? It says v'haya al metzach arayin. It should be on his metzach. So the chatzitza of tzitz, I would learn that from al metzach. If the body I learn out from al besorei, the head I learn out from al roishai, then the tzitz I would learn out from al metzach, on his forehead. So the whole din chatzitza is only on his forehead. The psilim are not on his forehead, therefore there's no din chatzitza. Possible. Suggestion. Okay, now another suggestion. It says by the avnei shoham, it says like this. There were 4 rows of stones. Tur oidem pititov rekes, hatura echad. Then zatura sheni, hatura shlishi, hatura revi. The first row, second row, the third row, and the fourth row. So in the first pasuk it says, Tur oidem pititov rekes, hatura echad. What does the word tur mean in the beginning of the pasuk? Tur oidem pititov rekes, hatura echad. It should say hatura echad. What does this word tur mean? So Onkelos says, tur means sidra kadma, the first line. Tur means the first line. Aydem pitav areches, sidra chad. Tur echad means sidra chad, one. And the first, so it says twice. It says the first row has these 3 stones. One row. So what are these 2 things? You said already is the first row. What is Atura Echad? So I think that maybe you could explain this, where in the beginning it says by Sheishes Meibreishes, it says V'yer Yom Echad. So Rashi says, why doesn't it say Yom Rishon? So he says, because then it was Echad by Lamai, only the Rabbeinu Shalom. So the first tour, the first line, has Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi. Levi, it says in the pasuk, "Vani lokachti es alaviyim metoich bnei Yisrael, v'hayu li alaviyim." The Leviim have the Kesef Kahuna, the Kesef Torah. The Leviim are the chashivsta of the Shvatim. That is the Rabbeinu Shalom's chelik. So Tur is saying the first row. Tur is like Onkelos says, Tur Sidru Kadmo, the first row, like it says at Tur Hasheni, this Tur is Tur Rishon. Tur Oidem Pitav Arakas. Tur Echad is telling you that this Tur is the Chashiv's the Tur, because this is the Tur which is Meyuchat for the Rabbeinu Shalom, because in this Tur is Shevet Levi. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you next week.